From the Toronto Star, I'm Saba Eitizaz, and this matters. What is about an all-you-can-eat offer that turns us all into Homer Simpson from this episode?
And for the gentleman?
All you can eat! All you can eat!
All right, when you're ready, take this plate over.
Please, don't take the steam tray, sir! That man ate all our shrimp and 2 plastic lobsters.
'Tis no man, 'tis a remorseless eating machine. 6 bells, time for closing.
Can't talk, eating.
Fairly warned be thee, says I.
Hey! 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 But the sign said all you can eat.
Now, I didn't grow up with the all-you-can-eat buffet. Sure, I ate them at weddings back home. My earliest buffet memory is at a cousin's wedding at home in Pakistan, and I still remember loving it. Something about the heady freedom of playing grown-up, of selecting my own food, and carrying mountains of chicken biryani on my plate. A buffet is a glamorous idea. They provide us with the otherwise difficult to accomplish joy of eating many servings of many different delicious things all at the same time, regardless of whether they're meant to be served together. But what I didn't realize about Canada was that everyone seems to have an opinion on the pros and cons of this style of dining. In fact, the traditional buffet seems to be baked into the very fabric of our multicultural country. For some, the idea of a buffet can bring back childhood memories of birthdays, Sunday brunches, road trips, where you hoped the roadside hotels offer a full breakfast buffet, or where tropical island reviews can make it or break it. For others, the thought of their stomach as a bottomless pit is enough to make them cringe. And that's before the debates about the quality of that food, the associated waste, or, as is highlighted now more than ever, those tiny germs on every serving spoon. Love 'em or hate 'em, buffets seem to polarize. And in our new world of social and physical distancing, where restaurants are struggling just to stay open by serving takeout and delivery, is the age of the buffet finally over? Today, I talked to the Star's culture reporter Karon Liu and asked him if Sunday brunch buffets, Chinese self-serve, and restaurant salad bars might become a thing of the past, and if Canadians are ready to say goodbye. Thanks so much, Karan, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me again, Saba.
So first of all, I want to know, I'm very curious about this. I'm relatively new to Canada, and I only know buffets from back home at weddings, where we used to have them. What is the big deal about buffets in Canada? It seems that everybody has an opinion on it.
Well, I love buffets because I think it's such a North American thing. It's where everyone has big family gatherings and celebrations because, for one thing, it's like an affordable way to feed 20 people, right? It's like maybe $40 a head, $50 a head if you go to the fancier places. And you don't have to figure out who wants to eat what, right? You kind of just shove everyone to the buffet stands and everyone gets their fill. They can eat as much or as little as they want. They can eat whatever they want. You don't have to really cater to anyone's dietary restrictions. And I think they're popular just because it's an easy way to get your fill and to accommodate different appetites. I think that's just how it's so built into our dining culture.
Yes, it seems like there's something for everyone. And at the same time, it sort of ties into the immigrant culture and the whole concept of Canadian multiculturalism, doesn't it? I was reading from your piece how for a lot of Canadians, the buffet might actually have been introduction to Chinese or Indian food.
Yeah, I think the first time I ever had Indian food was at the Indian buffets on Gerrard in Little India. I had no idea what I was eating. I just knew it was good. I didn't really read those little place cards that said whatever it was. I just continued ladling endless amounts of curry on basmati, and I was like, oh, what is this? It's a naan? What? That's so good. And I think for a lot of non-Chinese people, it was the Chinese buffet where they kind of got their first fill of Chinese food. And even I remember one of the first times I had sushi was at the Mandarin buffet, because I think it was maybe the mid to late 90s. Don't quote me on that. But I think that was when they started introducing sushi to the buffet menu, because I think the 90s was when sushi kind of started hitting the mainstream in North America. And I remember distinctly that one of my first times having sushi was at a buffet.
And speaking of the Mandarin, I mean, I'm relatively new here, but even I've heard of the legendary restaurant. The hit in this pandemic situation must have been quite devastating for the Mandarin. It's been around for 40 years and it serves almost 20,000 customers every day. So it's been quite bad recently, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, yeah, when your whole model is buffets, you can't really do that during a pandemic. So I called them and just asked them what's happening right now. And 28 of 29 of their locations are doing takeout right now. They said that it's too early to say what they're going to be doing once Ontario pulls back restrictions on restaurant dining rooms, but I imagine they're just scrambling right now to figure out what can they do. Are they going to switch to a la carte dining? Are they going to still do the all-you-can-eat model, but everyone has to order from their table? Like, it's a huge undertaking. I mean, restaurants everywhere, they're still figuring out how they're going to navigate the process of reopening. But to have a buffet on top of that, it's like a whole other layer of complication.
Exactly. And it seems that even as we are going towards some reopening, I wouldn't think anybody would be in a rush to reopen buffets in the midst of a pandemic. It's probably the most counterintuitive format for virus-free lives, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think buffets, like for a while now, they've always been the butt of jokes of, the easiest ways to get sick because you don't know who's been coming into close contact with the food or how long it's been sitting there. Like, as much as people love buffets, there's always that perception of germs and bacteria spreading and stuff like that. And I can't imagine people are rushing to go back to buffets, especially now with all that. And not just because of the food, but, the fact that you're lining up with a bunch of people, you're coming into close contact with a lot of people, like, let alone, like, if you forget about the food and the fact that you're going to be using shared utensils and grabbing plates from the same pile, never mind that, the fact that you're going to be lining up with people that are in close proximity to you, that's also another layer of complications when running a buffet.
So no matter what steps you might put in place, there will always be some uncertainty. So what does that mean for the buffet industry? Karon, is this sort of our exit interview to this format?
No, I think that the buffet will continue to operate in the way that we traditionally think of it as. I just think it's a question of when. So other cities that have partially reopened or are looking to reopen, the plans that the government has put in place does not include any self-serve stations at all, whether it's the buffet, whether it's the soda machines at the McDonald's or like the condiment stations, all that is gone. So some buffets in the US, they have started to reopen, but they've either pivoted to the cafeteria style where, you bring your tray up to the counter and an attendant will give you whatever food you want. There's a restaurant in California, it's an Indian restaurant. They've switched to the thali model, which I think is pretty ingenious. The buffets in Vegas, I don't think any of them are reopening anytime soon, especially because those are like giant buffets that seats hundreds of people. And I think just from a logistical standpoint, the sanitation, the efforts to keep everyone 6 feet apart while in line is just not worth it. Just like the cost of running a buffet, keeping in line with social distancing and sanitary regulations is just not worth it. But I think that the buffet will come back. It's just a matter of when there's a vaccine and when the curve is flattened and when we don't have to social distance anymore. I think it'll come back. But again, it's just a matter of when, and it probably won't happen, by the end of 2020 or next year.
Right. And you've been talking to a number of buffet owners and restaurateurs. So how are they taking this?
So there's one chain that I think it's particularly interesting. They're called Tandoori Flame. They say that they're the biggest Indian buffet in North America. They started out in Brampton, and then they also have a Mississauga location. And the owner is currently in Surrey right now because they have a location out in BC. And BC is starting to roll back their restaurant restrictions. So he's kind of there overseeing the reopening of that location. And They're reopening on June 1st. And the last time I talked to him last week, he says that they're probably going to switch to the model that a lot of sushi restaurants have been doing for a while now, where diners are given the menu and then they kind of tick what they want, and then the server brings it to them in unlimited amounts. I see that's probably the easiest, least painful way of doing this in terms of diners still being able to do the all-you-can-eat concept while staying at their tables and still maintaining social distancing.
Right. And as I talked to you about this earlier, you were mentioning that this person that you talked to might see it as not necessarily a bad thing, because there is a con to buffets as well in terms of food wastage or the cost. So what did they say to you about that?
Oh, yeah. It's common knowledge that, like, with buffets, there's going to be food waste because, that's food. They can't sit out there for the entire day. And there's going to be people that aren't going to be eating everything that they bring back to the table. So there's always, like, a percentage of wastage. It can go anywhere from 20 to 30 something percent. And there's this one small Chinese restaurant out in Thunder Bay where I spoke to an owner, and she has already reduced buffet service since last year because just the food costs and the food waste was just really cutting into her bottom line. And, she was really sad to see that the egg rolls that she was rolling by hand every day weren't getting eaten and had to be thrown out. So she was like, after the pandemic and after when our dining rooms reopened, she was like, I'm probably not going to start up the buffet again and just focus on a la carte dining or takeout. But yes, some of the restaurants that I talked to that are probably going to be moving towards the order from your table all you can eat option. They said that the bonus of that is that the restaurants have more control over the portion sizes and can control how much is going out at a time, thus reducing food waste.
Right. And you're mentioning portion sizes. Psychologically, I think the appeal, as you also mentioned in the piece, is we all have tried to make mountains out of food on our plates just because we can see so much of it at a buffet and then maybe later not be able to eat it. So there's that. So just seeing a huge table laid out with all the food you can eat, which is probably more than we're actually eating. So this is kind of a silver lining situation where we might actually be kinder to our stomachs in a way.
Well, I think right now everyone's more aware of food security and issues of distribution and food waste. It's always been there, but I think because of the pandemic, everyone's more aware of things like food scarcity. So I think everyone's a little bit more mindful of the food that they're throwing out. So maybe the sight of this giant feast laid upon them might not be as appetizing as being able to order smaller portions at a time and just filling up that way. I mean, I think people will continue to be gluttonous about buffets. I mean, the phrase "all you can eat" sounds like a challenge, right? So
yeah, I gotta take it up.
Still going to eat, but maybe they're going to be smarter about it. Whether it's how the food is being served or how they're eating, they're not going to be like me when I was a teen and ate a bowl of sprinkles just because I could.
Could you?
There was this buffet in downtown Toronto. I think it took place it was down by the train tracks or something like that. And I remember once on a dare, I filled an entire bowl of just ice cream sprinkles and a giant glug of hot fudge syrup. I don't know why. And then I took one bite and I was like, no, this is dumb. And then I just pushed it aside. And I was wasting food because I could and I wasn't being charged for it.
Almost everybody that I've spoken to has had similar stories. I actually have a friend with immigrant parents, and he says his parents actually refuse to eat at any other restaurant except at a buffet. So it's sort of a cultural icon here, the buffet, isn't it? I'm thinking about all the people who've told me about the countless birthdays, celebrations, anniversaries, and even weddings that have centered around a buffet. So how do you think this is going to hit Canadians on that sort of nostalgic level?
Well, I think for a lot of Canadians, I mean, we're a whole country of immigrants, right? We have so many people from around the world. And with that, we have a lot of landed immigrants where, we don't have inherited wealth or we don't have a lot of money. And buffets are great bang for your buck gatherings. And I think that's why it's such an important part of our dining identity, for me especially. we weren't rich, but we still wanted to, eat and have a lot of food and be happy and like see 20 of us gathered at a table. And, a buffet is the natural option to have. Again, I don't see this as the death of buffets forever, permanently. I think that they'll still be around. It's just a matter of when they'll come back. I have no doubt that the buffets at a wedding or like a graduation or a birthday, I have no doubt that it'll come back. It's just a matter of when and what other forms it might take.
So our conversation is a bit of a temporary eulogy for the buffet. You have hope it's going to return, and you've already been sharing some of your memories regarding that. What else comes to mind? Like, one was a very interesting dare that you took up, but what's the most special memory or the earliest memory that you have regarding a buffet?
I just remember like the mid-90s, there was like this war between, not war, maybe it was just something that I made up in my mind, but it was always we always either went to China Buffet King, Mr. Wong's Chinese buffet, or the Mandarin. It was always those three. And I think back then, those were like the three top buffets in the city. And then there was also JJ Muggs, which was more Western cuisine. And they used to have one at the Eaton Center where the H&M is now. They had one at Woodbine Mall. And I think they had one on Bloor as well. I didn't go to that one. But it was so funny because when my family took us to the Eaton Center one, I was like, oh my God, there's a buffet that didn't serve Chinese food. That's so weird.
Are they even real?
I was like, oh, this is so weird. Like to see like a big platter of cold cuts and cheese. And I think it was the first time that I ever had the stuffed grape leaves. And I was like, oh, what is this? The great thing about buffets is that it's an easy way to introduce yourself to new cuisines without being embarrassed of having to ask questions or do a Google search on your phone to see like what this dish looks like from the menu. You go to a buffet, you see it, it's there, you can decide whether or not you want it.
Right. All this talk has made me a little hungry now. I think I'm going to go make myself a quarantine sandwich, not a buffet.
Have fun with your dried beans and sourdoughs and whatever, and your regrown windowsill scallions.
Yes, I'm going to scavenge in the refrigerator. Thank you so much, Karan. This has been a very interesting conversation for me.
All right. Take care.
That was the Toronto Star's culture reporter, Karon Liu. That's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. This Matters is hosted and produced by me, Saba Eitizaz, Adrian Chung, and Raju Moter. Produced and mixed by Sean Pattenden, and our director of programming is JP Fozo. Our show theme music is by So Called, and our episode music is by Mike DeAngelis. We want to hear what stories matter to you. Please send us comments, questions, or ideas to thismatters@thestar.ca. Please consider supporting the journalism the Toronto Star newsroom does at thestar.com. And don't forget to subscribe to This Matters on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Let's talk soon.